Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us today for the webinar Processing and Recharging Payroll for Groups, How It Works with Employment Hero and Mayday. My name is Lachlan Baxter, and I'm a Senior Partnership Manager here at Employment Hero. And I'm joined today by two very special guests, Jack Thiel, the APAC Commercial Lead at Mayday, and Lucy Colbourne, Assistant Accountant at Kollosche. I'm going to hand over to Jack to introduce himself.
Cool. Thanks, Lachlan, and thanks everyone for joining us today. As Lachlan mentioned, my name's Jack. I'm the APAC Commercial Lead here at Mayday. I started my journey into this space as a chartered accountant before making the move over to accounting tech about 5 years ago. At the beginning of this year, I joined Mayday, and I suppose a little bit of context for anybody who doesn't know us as of yet, because I know you're all big Employment Hero users, but you may not have heard of Mayday. We're actually an accounting automation platform which is on a mission to mend month-end for larger Xero businesses, beginning with the needs of those that are multi-entity. So we were actually founded back in 2021. We're really proud to be the intercompany solution of choice for Xero businesses. We have 245-star reviews on the Xero App Store. We won Xero Emerging App of the Year back in 2023 as well. And I suppose, without getting into too much detail on what we do and the product, because I know we'll jump in and do a little bit of a run through later today. We have three products at the moment: Mayday Balancer for managing all of your intercompany loans, Mayday Recharger, which is what we're going to run through today for, I suppose, taking the pain and headache out of recharging intercompany costs and revenues. And then Brag, which is bank rec across the group for, I suppose, enhancing your Xero bank feed to work better across multiple entities. I guess that's probably enough from me for now. Looking forward to discussion today and showing you a little bit of what Mayday and Employment Hero can do together. Lucy, over to you.
Thanks, Jack, and good morning, everyone. Thanks, Lachlan. Thanks, Employment Hero, for having me here. My name's Lucy, and I'm an assistant accountant at Kollosche on the Gold Coast. Kollosche is a multifaceted real estate business in residential, commercial, new project sales, as we also have a property management side in residential and also commercial leasing. Alongside that, we have an in-house marketing team, which is where we sort of have drilled down into our use of Employment Hero and Mayday, which will be sort of our story that I'll share today. Just a bit more about Kollosche. We've experienced rapid growth over the last 5 years, which has outlined the need to move quickly and change our accounting and payroll steps and processes we had. My role at Kollosche mainly encompasses the management accounting side, so monthly recharges, monthly journals, all that jazz, as well as I process and manage the fortnightly payroll. So I'm looking forward to sharing Kollosche's journey with you all and grateful for the opportunity. Thanks, Jack and Lachlan.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the introduction, guys. Welcome. We're really happy to have you present with us today. Some quick housekeeping before we jump into the presentation itself. So we definitely have allocated some time at the end of the webinar for your questions. There is a Q&A box at the bottom in the main bar of Zoom. So please just ask any questions that you have, and at the end we'll endeavor to get all of these questions answered for you. If we can't answer them, we will do so after the webinar. This webinar is, of course, being recorded, so if you do need to drop or can't or have missed something, we're more than happy to issue you this alongside the slides after today's session. But I think it would be a good time to jump into it. And what I'd love to do is invite Jack, first of all, just to really state the problem. What are, multi-group businesses in Xero, Employment Hero facing with their payroll? And how does Mayday operate to solve this problem? And I think it'd be really good as well, Jack, just for you to also explain what the term recharging means as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I'll start there and then I'll dig into the problem. So I guess when we talk about recharging, where recharging or on-charging sometimes are used interchangeably, but basically this is the process whereby, maybe one of your Xero organizations incurs a whole bunch of costs, earns a bunch of revenues, from a cost perspective, pays the payroll, and then they need to apportion some of those costs out to other organizations in a group. So this is quite a common thing to have a centralized employment entity. Pays all the payroll, but we want to have those wage costs represented across our different regions, across our different venues, whatever it may be. And so as many of you who are here today probably know, this is just a completely manual process at the moment. So I guess diving into the broader problem, it really is that Xero has built such a fantastic accounting platform for small businesses that people don't really want to leave, because it does such a great job of being an accounting platform, a general ledger, but obviously it has its limitations, and that's why its ecosystem exists, the add-ons that come in to basically say, hey, we can see a gap or a challenge or a problem that needs to be solved, so let's jump in and do that. And as a result, you end up with businesses who take Xero, they add on a couple of apps like an Employment Hero or a Mayday, and then they're able to get more and more out of this solution. They grow up, they become more complex, they have more staff, more employees, they restructure things, they have an employment entity that they create. So for whatever reason, they have this multi-entity situation that then presents itself for various different reasons. Xero, of course, is not a multi-entity accounting software. So each of those organizations is completely siloed from a intercompany perspective. And so, when it comes to recharging payroll or any other cost from one Xero organization to another, it relies on, a team member, an accountant in the team to basically sift through that Xero file's P&L, identify the transactions, pull them out, put them into a big spreadsheet. They then go through and apportion those costs out, how much of each cost belongs to which of our entities in the group. Okay, maybe manageable if you're 2 entities, but probably a bit more difficult once you get to 5, 10, 15. We've got groups with 80 plus Xero organizations all under the one group. So things get very time consuming and quite monotonous and boring, I suppose, for the person who's having to deal with it. So these are the broader problems that surround this. And that's why Mayday exists, right? So Mayday comes in to effectively try and take the pain out of this process, automate what should be automated, make sure that it's not as error prone as the spreadsheet or a risk of error there. And the monotonous piece is something not to overlook as well. Staff want to be engaged in their day-to-day. They don't want to be posting 100 different journals into 100 different Xero files to post to recharge the payroll when a system can do it for them. So that's really where we come in. I suppose I'll give you a little bit more context as we kind of go through the demo and I actually show you in action what this means. Like, what does it mean for Mayday to automate your recharges? So very happy to kind of speak to that and show that in a little bit more detail when we jump to the demo part of this. But I guess maybe, Lucy, you can kind of expand on your own story here, and that context will be useful, because ultimately the world that you've kind of got yourself into is one where you've got your staff and you run your payroll through Employment Hero, that posts into Xero, Mayday picks those transactions up, splits them out and recharges them across the group. So that's kind of the end result that we're looking for here. But yeah, Lucy, maybe you can tell your own story there.
Yeah, for sure. So just leading on from what Jack was saying there, I started at Kollosche about 12 months ago now. And when I first started, we were in the process of moving to Employment Hero because we'd gotten to the point where 8 entities, the business had grown dramatically and Xero just wasn't doing what we needed, specifically payroll at that point in time. So we'd moved our payroll all across, but we were still finding that each fortnight or month I'd run the payroll, but I would still have to then go and export all the reports, download, put it into an Excel, and then manually recharge many of our operational staff and marketing teams salaries and wages across the company. And earlier this year we actually discovered Mayday, which has been a lifesaver. So basically Mayday just eliminated that whole spreadsheet manual process for us. So because of that, we now can run our payroll through Employment Hero. The journal will automatically export to Xero, and then at the end of the month I can pick those specific transactions up in Mayday and do it that way. Back to sort of within our Kollosche space, with the 7 entities, we have 8 operating entities, but 7 only have staff. 2 of those entities we have to on-charge salaries between different, so there's two entities that employ staff and we on-charge them throughout all the other entities. So as most of you probably know, because you're joining this webinar today, that's very time consuming when you have to manually download your payroll and work out on a headcount basis or however you work it out to split it across. We use the tracking categories within Xero as well to use to pick up these on charges. So from Xero into Employment Hero, we've mapped it out so that when I run Mayday, it picks it up using those tracking categories. The outcome for us has been super time saving, less time consuming, more efficient. There's less room for human error, which has been a huge benefit to me because we all know human error happens. And when at this point in time, we're still a small finance team. There's only 5 of us. So I basically manage the payroll and the management accounting. So one person doing it all, there's always going to be room for human error. And we've just found that these apps adding on to Xero has just been game changing, especially we don't really want to move to a different accounting software, not at this point in time. It's not really something that we're not there yet, or we don't necessarily need to be there yet as we keep expanding our app stack and, you know, all of those things. But I'd love to, yeah, I can't wait for you guys to see what Jack's showing you with the demo, because that'll give you a real understanding of how I work within the interfaces and then how it would look for you. That's sort of me for now. If anyone has any questions, just pop them in the Q&A. But like I said, I think the demo, I might even jump in throughout Jack's demo and sort of jump in and add my comments on there, because I think it'll be useful for me to sort of help explain while you're demoing. But yeah, I'll hand it back to you, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, no worries. Let me share screens and yeah, please, by all means, Lucy, jump in because I'm sure there's going to be a few comments here and there that you'll have a little bit more context on, first-hand experience on. So, look, I want to start. I know I've already shared my screen. You're probably looking at this journal, but I want to begin kind of just explaining this scenario that I want to kind of take you through. So, let's imagine we have a group. We've got an Australian entity, we have a UK entity, and we have a US entity. For the sake of this example, the UK entity is the head entity, but obviously it's just a demonstration. For yourselves, you might have multiple entities within one region. They might all be Australian. They might be multi, currency. Absolutely no stress whatsoever. Mayday handles all of that. But I guess keep in mind, we've got a UK head entity. They employ the staff and they pay the wages. We've got an Australian entity, we've got a US entity, and we've got a mix of staff across all locations. So you've got some engineers, finance team, marketing team. And so when I've set up my employees in Employment Hero, I've allocated them all to the relevant tracking category and relevant region. So I've got my region here set up as a tracking category in Xero, which I then leverage in Employment Hero. Tracking category is department, which I then leverage in Employment Hero as well. Lucy, is this the kind of setup that you're referring to, that you're using in your,
It is. So we obviously, the region is not applicable to us, but we have our department set up, which is sort of lists out operation, marketing, like digital team, design team, all of those different departments. So yeah, this is how we have it set up.
Perfect. Cool. So, I mean, this is obviously just a simple example where we've got our wages lines here. So we've got wages, hitting our direct wages account, all to the region of Australia, but broken out into our engineering, finance, and marketing departments. We've got our superannuation for those 3 departments, and then we've got the total wages payable here. And that's the Australian region component. We've then got the UK and we've got the US as well. Obviously, I'm not going into all the detail here, all the different tax lines and everything else that you might see on your payroll journals, but hopefully that kind of gives you a bit of a starting point as to where we're at. So I've run my payroll in Employment Hero for the 15th of September. I've posted it. Maybe it then comes to month end, 30th of September. Maybe we pay our payroll twice a month. So then I've got my 30th of June version of this journal, as you can see here. So I've got my 2 payrolls done for the month of September. I now want to recharge this as part of my month end process. So this is where Mayday comes in. I come across to Mayday. We've obviously got the 3 products that I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier. We won't go into Balancer and Brag today. So if you're interested in those features, then obviously let's chat separately. But for recharge, what we're going to do first is set up our recharge rules. So this is like a Xero bank rules, I suppose, piece of the product. So you come in here, set these up once. You shouldn't need to update them on a regular basis. But once you've got them set up like so, I've got my HQ wage recharge rules. Let's just go into one of them so you can have a look. I've got my HQ wage recharge to AU from our UK-based or GBP HQ entity over here on the left. So let's go into this rule. Effectively, what this is telling Mayday is I would like to recharge my wages at cost. So you've got the alternative option of making them a cost plus or a marked up wage recharge. So this is sometimes the case where effectively the HQ is or this employee servicing entity is paying all the wages, and then they take 5% or 10% on top as their, I suppose, their management fee or admin charge for doing so. But in the case of this rule, this is just at cost, which means we're going to grab exactly what's in Xero and recharge it as required without a markup. Step 2 here, which transactions should be recharged? This is where we're going to isolate the specific set of transactions that we want to recharge. So down here, I've said where the account code from Xero is 320-direct wages. Great. That's kind of part 1 of the criteria. Part 2 I'm looking for is where the tracking category is Australia. And then part 3 is where the line item description contains wages. Now, that's because I specifically want to split out my superannuation into a different recharge rule. I want my superannuation to be recharged into a superannuation chart of account code in my Australian entity. I want to keep that separate from my wage expense. So that's why I've specified wages here. So in essence, Mayday is going to pick up the lines that contain the word wages and contain the region of Australia. Now, I could go deeper than this and break this out based on department. I'm not for the sake of today's demo, but if for some reason, when I recharge this, I want to just grab the engineering line, I could do that. I just need to add that tracking category information into the recharge rule, like so. I could do that if I needed to. But once I've isolated the transactions applicable to this rule, then all I have to do is tell Mayday which entities should be charged for this. Where do I want this cost to be recharged? So down here, I'm going to recharge 100% of this cost to my Australasian entity into their wages and salaries account. And then I'm just going to give this a name, HQ wage recharge to AU. Okay, great. Save that rule. And then effectively, when I run my recharges through Mayday, it's going to grab all of those relevant payroll items. It's going to recharge them all to my Australasian entity. And then it's going to place them into the relevant wages and salaries account. Now, something that I'm not going into today is there's deeper levels to the complexity here. We've got recharges, we've got people recharging payroll where staff move around, where they might allocate a certain amount of their time to Australia and to the UK and to the US, all in the same pay period. There's more detail and complexity to this. So if you're thinking, I don't think this will work for me, well, I think the first thing would be let's have a chat just to make sure, because we may well be able to do what you're after. This same concept then applies to all of your other expenses in Mayday as well, not just wages. So, subscription costs, accounting fees, legal fees, marketing costs, whatever you need to recharge across the group, you can apply this logic. I've now got my recharge for wages. I've got my super recharge as well, and I've got my North American wage recharge set up. So I've got my 3 rules there. I don't need a rule for my HQ or my GBP entity because my UK related employees will just stay in that head entity. I'm not recharging anything out for those employees. Once I've got the wages set, then it's say the 1st of October, it's time to run our recharges. I jump across to calculations here on the left-hand side. I come into Mayday and I say, I'd like to run a new calculation for the month of September. I've now run that. And effectively what Mayday is going to do is it's going to go over all of your different Xero organizations, identify which transactions meet the criteria of your rules, specifically in this case, those payroll journals. It's then going to grab those, split them up as required by your rules, allocate them out, and then draft up the postings for you to review to Xero. So if I go into September here, we can see firstly all the transactions on one screen that you need to review. So effectively, we don't want this to be a black box. We don't want you to hit a button and then suddenly a whole bunch of stuff gets posted across your group. First and foremost, we show these to you. So under Mayday HQ, you can see that we've got our different expense rules here for our wage recharge. I can click those open. I can see all the different transactions that have been recharged. I can hover over the amounts and see what percentage is going to be allocated where. So in all of these cases, 100% of the cost is being allocated to a specific location. But there are ways to set up rules to say, I only want 20% to go here and 80% to go there, or really whatever you need. But once I've reviewed all these transactions, I'm happy. Yep, these all look good. They're going to the Australian entity. These are going to my North American entity. This all looks fine to me. I'm happy. I then move through this little workflow that we have. And then finally, you're going to get to a posting screen. On the left-hand side, you've got your different inter-entity pairings. So, all your different organizations in the group who are recharging other entities in the group for whatever reason. But if I go to Mayday HQ to Mayday Australasia, obviously here we're going to see all of our wage recharges. So I've got my wage and my super recharges. Now, the reason why they're broken out like this into multiple lines is because these postings do impact the different tracking categories that were on the journals as well. Now, you've got the choice because different businesses do this in different ways. Some will invoice and bill their recharges with the intention that cash is then going to get transferred and these are actually going to get paid. Others, it's just a journal. It's just an internal intercompany accounting journal. It offsets via the loan accounts. Either way is totally fine. You can do both with Mayday. And then when you're ready, if I've reviewed this and I'm happy, I can just go ahead and click post to Xero. Mayday then goes ahead and posts both sides into both Xero files. One invoice in one entity, bill in the other entity. They're already there. So if I want to jump into this one, I can click on that button there. Mayday takes me straight through to the invoice that has been posted from Recharger, and that job is now done. So all I have to do is work my way through my different inter-entity pairings, and then I'm basically done for the month. So, I mean, Lucy, was there any step to that I missed or didn't highlight enough, or that you wanted to kind of call out based on your experience?
I don't think so. I was just going to add when you were talking about how this demo is just recharging 100%. I was just going to say we actually are one of those people who recharge to different entities. So we have our apportionment set up that goes between 7 entities. So each month, and you can change the headcount in that apportionment each month. So I just wanted to throw that in there because it is more complex. Like you said, Jack, it does have the ability to be more complex than what you've shown. And I can attest to the fact that it's actually really easy to do. I also just wanted to add, we also created as a journal. So if you're someone like us who uses journals as a preference for this sort of recharge rather than a bill or an invoice, that was a win for us. That's just personal preference here at Kollosche, how we use our journals. But apart from that, everything kind of matched how I use it in our sort of day-to-day realm.
Yeah, awesome. And I guess just to call out that apportionments piece. So yeah, for today, obviously, I just grabbed expenses from Xero and apportioned them 100% to a certain entity based on those tracking categories. But if you want, you can create these, what we call apportionment methods. And headcount's a great example. Another example people connect with really well is we work with farming groups that have multiple farms. And on those farms, they have a number of animals. They do a stock take each month of the number of animals. They recharge certain costs based on that across the group. So you can create any and all apportionment methods. But once you've got those set up, you update them once a month or just double check them once a month. And then in your recharge rules section, when you're creating any rule, you can apply your apportionment methods. And that way, not only do you have the same ability to isolate the transactions in Mayday, you can split them up and put them into different locations all within one recharge rule.
Yeah, and that's what we love the most. Well, I love the most at Kollosche, especially with our payroll. Obviously, we can set up the tracking categories through Employment Hero to Xero, and then being able to use this to then pick up those certain categories to recharge we use headcount basis, as I've said, per headcount is, incredible. So thanks for the demo, Jack. That was great.
No, awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks so much, Jack, for the demonstration. And thanks so much for the input as well, Lucy, in sharing the Kollosche story. We've got about 5 minutes left on the webinar. We'd love to invite you to ask any questions for Jack and Lucy, and we're more than happy to answer them live. So remember, guys, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Please feel free to drop any questions in there.
I mean, while people are kind of thinking of any questions that they have, I do kind of want to call out that there is this more complex scenario. I did speak to it briefly, whereby people will have, and I think, Lucy, for part of your business, this is still an element that you use for situations where you've got staff who are working across multiple tracking categories each month. Obviously, this adds a layer of complexity. Because, sure, if your Australian staff just work in Australia all month, that's great. You've got your tracking category assigned. But if someone, does spend a portion of their time across all regions, or multiple staff do, or you work in a business where tracking that stuff is it's more complex than we kind of demoed today, there is I suppose, a intermediary step that we can apply and allow you a sheet-based approach in between Xero and Mayday, which allows you to basically build out any formula-based, any more complex recharge scenario, which we can then pick up, isolate, and recharge from. So we won't go into detail on it today, but it is a question we get sometimes when it comes to payroll recharging. So if you're interested to see that, or if you were thinking already, I think our payroll is a bit more complex than what we've just seen demoed, then can take you through that separately.
Yeah, great. Just one quick question, Jack. So I know this webinar was definitely aimed at Xero users, but Employment Hero, being a payroll module, we do integrate with a whole bunch of small business accounting softwares. So I think QuickBooks, Mob Account, right, Xero as well. Does Mayday work in conjunction with other small business accounting softwares as well?
So it's just Xero at the moment, and QBO would be the next one probably on our roadmap. So beyond that, it's subject to what customers ask for and what the people we're speaking to are looking for. But for now, it's just Xero, yes.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for sharing. I'll give it another 30 seconds or so before we kind of move into the wrap up, just to see if anyone does have any other questions or anything else they'd like to hear from Jack and Lucy. Cool. So it doesn't appear there's any further questions. I'm sure Jack and Lucy have covered everything that's salient today. So thank you so much for your input and time today, guys. And thank you to everyone online as well who has joined us. After this session, a survey will automatically appear. So we'd love for you guys to complete that, give us some feedback. It's only going to allow Employment Hero to create content and webinars that are valuable to our customers and people that want to join. There's also a poll on screen. And just a friendly reminder as well, we will be sending out some additional resources after today's session. So once again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Lucy. And have a wonderful day, everyone. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Lachlan.
Thanks,
Thanks, Lucy.
Lachlan. Have a
See you
great day.
guys.